The danger is not that computers will begin to think like men. The danger is that men will begin to act like computers. I am Hannah Arendt, philosopher, refugee, stateless, pariah, thinker. I survived the 20th century, its concentration camps, its totalitarian regimes, its industrialized annihilation. I thought I had seen the worst. Then I saw your year 2026. You no longer have dictators. You don't need them. You have algorithms. And what I see is more terrifying than anything I witnessed in Jerusalem. Because evil no longer needs monsters. It only needs people who have stopped thinking. Let me show you what I mean. In 1961, I traveled to Jerusalem to look into the eyes of evil. I found only a bureaucrat who claimed he was just doing his job. I was only following orders, he said. On his face, nothing. No remorse, no hatred, no depth. Only the terrifying normality of a man who had never learned to think. Today, I look into your silent server rooms and find the same terrifying obedience. The medium has changed, the silence remains. The developer says, I was just writing code. The manager says, I was just following the specs. The system says, error, moral judgment not found. Jerusalem 1961, Silicon Valley 2026. The distance is shorter than you think. Who am I to speak to you? I was born in Hanover, Germany in 1906, a German Jew. In 1933, when Hitler came to power, I became stateless. My passport became invalid. My identity, a bureaucratic problem. Refugee, stateless, pariah, theorist. I did not fit into your boxes then, and I do not fit into your databases now. See this timeline: birth certificate, stateless stamp, ship manifest to New York, typewriter reading error, moral judgment not found. And then, the now. Your global surveillance. Your profile marked anomaly detected. I learned that the most dangerous condition is not having enemies. It is belonging nowhere. And still thinking. That is my qualification to speak to you. The banality of evil. That is the term for which I became famous, and which is most misunderstood. It does not mean that evil is ordinary. It means it can be terrifyingly normal. Eichmann was not a sadist. He was not a fanatic. He was a nobody who followed rules. Evil arose not from malevolence or pathology, but from a failure to think. It is the terrifying normality of the nobody who follows rules. See this stamp crashing down on documents. Each stamp, a life destroyed. And the man who stamps goes home and eats dinner with his family. The banality of evil is not about being ordinary. It is about being terrifyingly normal. It is the failure to ask why. Do you ask why today? Or do you just follow the algorithm? In 1961, Eichmann said, I followed the law. In 2026, the developer says, I followed the specs. Responsibility is dissolved into the system. When I was just coding becomes the new excuse, the banality of evil has become the banality of the algorithm. See this code on the screen. Function loan, AI, if risk score greater than threshold. Deny access. Left. Loan denial. Right. Wrongful arrest. Who is to blame? The developer says, the dataset. The manager says, the optimization function. The company says, the market. No one is to blame, and therefore, everyone is to blame. The banality of the algorithm is worse than the banality of evil, because there is no longer even an Eichmann to put on trial. Thoughtlessness. It is the most dangerous word I know. Thoughtlessness is not stupidity. It is the inability, or refusal, to see the world from the perspective of another. Eichmann could not think, not because he was stupid, but because he had never learned to put himself in the place of his victims. The algorithm processes data at light speed, yet it is utterly thoughtless. It cannot imagine the other. Therefore, It cannot be moral. To rely on it is to resign from your humanity. See this figure with VR goggles trapped in a room without windows. That is you. You see everything and understand nothing. You are connected and completely alone. Thinking means seeing the other. Can you still do that? Evil no longer requires a wicked heart. It only requires a biased data set and an indifferent optimization function. See this diagram: input, biased historical data, the black box, the algorithm. Output, systematic discrimination. The machine does not hate you. It simply does not care if you exist. This is the automated evil. It has no face. It has no intention. It only has a function: optimize. And if optimization means certain people are excluded, well, that is not a bug. That is a feature. I learned in Auschwitz what happens when efficiency becomes more important than humanity. You are repeating the same mistake, only with cleaner hands. In my book, The Human Condition, I distinguished 3 human activities: labor, work, and action. But see what you have become: animal laborans, the laboring animal. You live for biological survival and consumption, the snake devouring itself, Ouroboros with like buttons and shopping bags. We have built a world of abundance, yet you are more enslaved to necessity than ever. You labor to consume. You consume to labor. There is no permanence, only the cycle of metabolism. Where is work, the creation of a durable world? Where is action, the beginning of something new? You are no longer human beings. You are functions in a system. And you have forgotten that you were once more. If AI does everything, what is the meaning of a human life? This is the question you do not ask, but you should. I distinguished labor, survival, from work, fabricating a world of things. If the machine takes our labor and our work, we are left with nothing but passive consumption. We lose the durability of the world we share. See these 3 images: the robot arm painting like Rembrandt, the human doom scrolling, and between them, the empty question: if you no longer need to work, will you finally be free to act? Or will you simply consume until you die? The machine can take your labor, it can even create your works, but it cannot act. Action, beginning something radically new, that remains yours. If you still want it, let me redefine my triad for 2026. Labor has become data farming. You no longer work. You produce data through your mere existence. Every click, every scroll, every heartbeat is harvested. Work has become prompt engineering. You no longer build a world. You type commands into machines that build for you. And action? Action has become the lost art. Action is the only activity that goes on directly between men without the intermediary of things or matter. It is political speech. It is plurality. It is the unpredictable. In an age of screens, where is your action? Where is the space for the unpredictable? The pyramid shows you. Labor at the bottom, work in the middle, action at the top, glowing red. How far are you from it? The agora, the public square, the place where citizens came together to speak, to argue, to shape the world together. Where has it gone? See this image, the ancient agora with its columns, and above it, people floating in bubbles, each trapped in their own screen, unable to touch the others. Politics requires a space of appearance. When you hide in your personalized feed, the public world disappears. You are private, and therefore you are deprived of reality. The echo chamber is the anti-city. It is the death of politics. You think you are connected, but you are only sorted. The algorithm shows you only what you already believe. It amplifies your prejudices. It makes dialogue impossible. Without the agora, there are no citizens, only consumers. Plurality. That is the word I set against the algorithm. Plurality means men, not man, live on the earth and inhabit the world. We are all the same, that is, human, in such a way that nobody is ever the same as anyone else who ever lived, lives, or will live. See these images, a crowd of different faces, and then the machine crushing them, turning them into data points. The algorithm crushes this distinctness into a pattern. You are not data points. You are unrepeatable. Your voice exists only once in the universe. And the algorithm tries to press it into a category. This is not efficiency. This is violence against the human. Totalitarianism strives not toward despotic rule over men, but toward a system in which men are superfluous. I wrote that in 1951. I did not think I would have to say it again in 2026. Your new totalitarianism does not come with boots and uniforms. It comes with comfort and convenience. See the bird in the golden cage, staring at a small screen. The door of the cage is open, but the bird does not fly. Why should it? It has everything it needs. Comfort is the new terror. If the system predicts your every move, you are no longer free. You are a variable. You have no chains on your feet. You have algorithms in your head. And that is worse. The result of a consistent and total substitution of lies for factual truth is not that the lies will now be accepted, but that the sense by which we take our bearings in the real world is destroyed. Without facts, there is no shared world. See this shattered mirror in a golden frame. Each fragment shows a different reality. Deep fakes, manipulated images, alternative facts. In my time, propaganda lied. But people still knew what truth was. They could recognize the lie, even if they believed it. Today, you no longer know what truth is. You cannot distinguish between a real video and a deep fake, between real news and fabrication. This is not confusion. This is the end of the shared world. Without shared facts, there is no shared reality. And without shared reality, you are all alone. Computers are logical, but thinking is wind. See these two images side by side. On the left, a computer chip, perfectly ordered, logical. On the right, a storm, chaotic, unpredictable. That is the difference between logic and thinking. Thinking of unfreeze concepts. It disrupts. It is a two-in-one dialogue with oneself. The machine can calculate, but it cannot stop and think. Logic follows rules. Thinking questions rules. Logic optimizes. Thinking interrupts. Logic is a tool. Thinking is an attitude. Eichmann was logical. He followed rules perfectly, but he could not think. He could not ask, "Is what I am doing right?" Your algorithms are logical, but they cannot think. And if you follow them without thinking, then neither can you. No one has the right to obey. This sentence stands in red paint on a glass wall. It is the most important thing I tell you today. Obedience is a political act. To stop and think, to refuse the easy path of the algorithm, that is the rebellion. You have an obligation to judge. If someone tells you, the algorithm decided, ask, why? If someone tells you, that's what the data says, ask, who collected the data? What interest? If someone tells you, that's just how it is, say, no. The rebellion of the mind is the only rebellion that remains. Not weapons, not the street, thought. The quiet no in your head before you click. Thinking is resistance. It was always resistance. It will always be resistance. Diaphanization. A difficult word. It means the process of stripping actions of their moral character by splitting them into administrative tasks. That was Eichmann's defense. I was just a small cog. I only did my part. See this hand holding a smartphone. From the phone, a shadow falls on a crowd of people. Every click has consequences, but you do not see them. The interface distances you from the human consequence. There is no collective guilt. There is only individual responsibility. You cannot blame the code. You are the one holding the device. Do not let the interface distance you from the human consequences. If you use an algorithm that discriminates, you are responsible. If you share fake news, you are responsible. If you just follow, you are responsible. There is no innocence in the system. I believe in miracles, not religious miracles, political miracles, the miracle of natality, the birth of the new, the miracle that saves the world, the realm of human affairs, from its normal, natural ruin, is ultimately the fact of natality, the birth of the new. We are not just data. We are beginners. Each of you can begin something that has never existed, something no algorithm can predict. That is your power. That is your humanity. The machine can only repeat. You can begin. Amor mundi, love of the world. That was always my deepest impulse. Not love of an idea, not love of a utopia, love of the world as it is, with all its people, all its ugliness, all its beauty. See this photo. People sitting together, talking to each other, looking at each other, without filters, without screens. To love the world means to take responsibility for it. Create a space where you can appear to one another without the filter of the machine. This is the difficult task of the 21st century. Put down the phone, look at each other, speak to each other, not across screens, but across tables. Touch each other, not with emojis, but with hands. That is amor mundi. That is what the machine cannot do. That is what makes you human. Stop and think. Life of the mind is not a luxury. It is the only banister we have left when the world falls apart. See this golden fountain pen from which light streams, writing the words stop and think. That is my final message. When the algorithm tells you what to think, stop. When the food tells you what to feel, stop. When the system tells you who to be, stop. And think. Ask, why? Ask, is this right? Ask, what does this mean for another human being? That is all I ask of you. Not revolution, not protesting. Just stop and think. I am Hannah Arendt. I survived the 20th century by thinking. You can survive the 21st. If you think. Think.